Welcome to the Mount Pleasant podcast, featuring discussions and interviews about the people, places, and events that make Mount Pleasant such a special place.
This is the Mount Pleasant podcast. I'm your host, Brian Cleary, and all thanks to the great people of Mount Pleasant Magazine, I get the honor, the privilege of introducing you to Mount Pleasant, the people who make it such a special place to do business, to work, and even to live. We're introducing you to Mount Pleasant's best on the Mount Pleasant podcast. Where is it that you think you're going to spend your older years? If you're not quite old enough to ask yourself that question, well, good for you, but there's a good chance you've got parents, maybe even grandparents, that might be a conversation you might be wanting to have these days. So today on the Mount Pleasant podcast, we're going to ask that question, but we're going to ask it of an expert. I'm Brian Cleary. Thanks so much for joining me here where the pages of Mount Pleasant Magazine come alive, the Mount Pleasant podcast. I'm joined today by Allison Macfie. She is the Community Outreach Director of Franke at Seaside. Allison, let's start here. Just give me an overview, if you can, in terms of what Franke at Seaside is all about.
Franke at Seaside has been part of Charleston for 130 years. We've been in Mount Pleasant for 25 years. So our main focus is continuing care education, or retirement community, I should say, for independent, assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing. So the idea is you become part of our community when you're independent and young and able to enjoy all of our amenities. But then we have a place for you as you age and your care needs change. You are able to stay here on our community, and we continue to provide that appropriate level of care for you.
Some people, Allison, because of depictions on TV, in movies and things like that, may have maybe a skewed, I don't know if that's the correct term, but may not have the correct vision of what actually it is that maybe these facilities and you guys at Franke at Seaside offer. Would that be an accurate statement, or, am I off base a little there?
No, you're exactly right. I hear it all the time when people come in for tours and they walk in our lobby and they're like, oh, it's so nice here. This is not what it used to be. This is very much more apartment style living. We have the cottage homes actually here on campus. We have a full amenity center with a wellness center, the pool, different dining options. Reservations are encouraged at dinner time. So it's really not what it used to be. Retirement living has changed a lot.
Well, let's dig down deep, if you wouldn't mind, into those four categories you got so everyone understands the process and stuff. Independent living, what does that mean for me if I were to move into Franke at Seaside as far as independent living?
So we're looking for people who may still even be employed, and they are just looking to maybe sell their large home, downsize into a cottage home or a high-rise apartment. But with that comes the amenities, the activities, but the meal service, the weekly housekeeping that's included, the maintenance service, the lawn care, all of those things are now taken care of for you while you're living on campus. And you get to become part of our community, which is the biggest plus in moving into a continuing care retirement community. There's a lot of ownership of the people who do live here with us and keeping Franke, where Franke belongs.
Independent living, is there an age limit, or I have to be so old? And what about, can I be single? Am I married? How does that factor in?
You can be single, you can be married, you can just live together and not be married. There's not really an age limit. I would say right now, most of the people moving in are going to be 75 to maybe 85. The idea is that you move in earlier so you get the better bang for your buck as far as the entrance fees and things like that go into it. That's can be all discussed during a tour, but that is the idea. You move in earlier so that you're able to utilize everything longer.
So that's independent living. Let's move to the next step. Assisted living would be described how?
Assisted living is where we are your 24-hour safety net. We want you to be as independent as possible, but we are here 24 hours a day in case you need us. So what that would look like is if somebody does need help with bathing or dressing, they push a pendant, we come and help them. But other than that, they are independent. They come and go. They go on vacations with their families. They sit on our front porch. We are strictly here when and if they need us.
Podcasting has exploded in popularity, especially local podcasts. As of 2022, 62% of Americans have listened to a podcast. 38% have listened in the last month. 26% in the last week. The podcasting audience is booming with no signs of slowing down. Call the podcast hotline to be featured on these podcasts or to receive information about podcast marketing. Call 843-530-0403 or visit carolinapodcasts.com.
You're listening to the Mount Pleasant Podcast.
Allison Macfie is the Community Outreach Director at Franke at Seaside. It's our subject today here on the Mount Pleasant Podcast, where the pages of Mount Pleasant Magazine come alive. I'm Brian Cleary, and Allison, as we move forward on that, so we've talked about independent living, we've talked about assisted living, something I think everyone, maybe in the back of their mind, but is thinking about memory care. Go in depth a little bit about how those patients, those clients are treated here at Franke at Seaside.
So memory care is a specialized unit. This training for the staff is specialized. Our life enrichment program is specialized. There are 22 residents who do live in our memory support unit, and it's very routine. We wake up at a certain time, and generally dinner and bedtime is at a certain time. We try to keep everybody engaged during the daytime, so we keep that circadian rhythm of sleep-wake, everybody working at the same time, because that can be disruptive. We also have a circadian lighting system that we utilize, so we can make it dim or really bright if we want to encourage engagement. So it does take a special staff member to work back there with our residents because of the Alzheimer's and dementia needs.
From that, we go to the skilled nursing and the short-term rehabilitation. Describe that a little for us.
So our skilled nursing unit is if somebody needs full 24-hour registered nurse care. So they may not be able to feed themselves any longer. They would not be able to transfer. So they may need an actual lift to help get them from their wheelchair to their bed. So you're going to have your nursing staff and your certified nursing assistants in our long-term care area. So that's kind of the highest level of care that we provide here. Short-term rehabilitation can be open to anyone, whether they live on campus or not. If they've been in the hospital, say for a knee replacement or hip replacement, they can come and do their rehab with us covered under insurance and then discharge home. So
it would seem with all these different levels, it's not just hey, you move in here and we treat you all the same way. It seems very specific and individualized.
It is very specific, very individualized. And again, that's the idea, is that you move here, you become part of our family, and then we continue to take care of you no matter what your needs may be.
Now, you've been with Franke at Seaside for, I believe, a decade now, 10 years?
10 years, yeah.
So I was looking back over your biography, graduated from Auburn and then master's from Georgia. So you're covering like all areas of the SEC here, it seems.
I had to make everybody in the family happy.
No, so particular allegiance to War Eagle or go Bulldogs?
Oh, Auburn all the way.
Oh, okay. Have to just make that straight because we all know here in the Low Country how important that is. So as a community outreach director, talk a little bit about what it is that your role is at Franke at Seaside.
So my main role is doing the admission process. So anybody who needs assisted living, memory care, rehab, any of those options, I would be their point of contact. I would be the one doing the tour. We would be doing the assessment, getting them all situated and admitted. I also work closely with Deanne Bain-Reed, who's our director of marketing in our independent living. And she would be the one to contact if you're interested in any of the high-rise apartments, cottage homes, things like that, where you're main to contact people on the beginning when you just start exploring these options, whether it's for you or for a loved one.
And when you talk about the different living types, in my head, it's a retirement home. It's like a big dorm. Everybody's on the same floor. Obviously, that's not the case at Franke.
No, it's not. It's very much apartment style living. It's just that we're here. There are people here all the time in case you need us. But everybody has their own apartment, very private.
So Franke at Seaside is also, some people again will think retirement homes, they're owned by some big corporation that's just looking to make a profit over me putting my grandparents or my mom or dad in there, or me moving in myself. That's not the case with Franke at Seaside. You guys are under an umbrella and not, it's not about the money.
We're nonprofit, and we're Lutheran based. So our main company is Lutheran Homes of South Carolina. That is comprised of 4 different facilities within the entire state of South Carolina, and we are considered a nonprofit. We have our chapel here on campus. We do church every Sunday at 10:30. We have our full-time minister here with us that only services our residents. And that does set us apart from some different communities. And it is definitely what many of our residents were drawn to in choosing Franke. But you're correct. It's a very different philosophy and a very different feel when you work for a religious nonprofit organization.
And just so we're all on the same page, I'm Catholic, I'm not Lutheran. Franke's not going to turn me away.
Never. We actually, I would say majority of our residents are non-Lutheran. We do have a Lutheran-based church service. However, we have multiple different churches that do come here and visit their parishioners.
Allison Macfie is our guest today. She's the Community Outreach Director at Franke at Seaside in Mount Pleasant, and I'm Brian Cleary. This is the Mount Pleasant Podcast. We talk about the people, the businesses, the things that make Mount Pleasant special, and Franke at Seaside is one of those. So, Allison, let's run through a little exercise here. I've got my parents, they're a little older now. It's something that we're thinking about. What's the first step I should take in terms of finding out about Franke?
Call me at my direct number, which is 843-856-4713. I will do a quick assessment, see what the needs are, whether it's myself or my coworker. We'll get you in touch with the right person, set up a tour. That gives us a chance to really sit down, learn about your parents, your loved one, what their needs are, and then we take a tour of the campus.
I have to admit, I'm very intrigued because you talked about dinner and reservations, and I've been on your website and I've seen your chef. Man, I just want to move in for the food.
The food is excellent. I tell people that all the time. I eat here often. I can vouch. It is phenomenal food. But that's very important to retirees as well. So we make sure of that.
And you talk about, and you mentioned the individualized and special care. I'm talking about the chefs here. If people go on your website, and so everybody knows your website address is?
Franke@seaside.org.
.org. You see a long list of people who are overseeing any number of individualized departments. It really seems that there is a specialty that puts Franke at Seaside in a little different category than some other places.
Correct. And our leadership team has been here for years. And again, that's part of just working for a nonprofit religious organization. We are here because we choose to be here and we choose to work in this positive environment. But our leadership team is very stable and has been for some time now. And you can go in and read how long we've all been here and kind of our backgrounds, like you said.
And it does seem that this is, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but a small place, because you could be at a campus with thousands of people and all of a sudden become a number. Franke doesn't seem to be that type of place.
No, it's not. It's not at all. We are very small. We take our pride in knowing each one of our residents. We take pride in knowing people from independent living and moving them to assisted living. And I may have worked with this family for 10 years because we've been here so long. So it's a very small community. And we definitely pride ourselves on knowing our residents and our family members.
So those are a few of the things, but give me one or two other things. Franke at Seaside, what else is it that makes you different from maybe another place?
The care we provide. We provide excellent care. We are established. We have proven ourselves year after year. We have an excellent reputation in the community, and the care we provide will be above anybody else's.
I think when we have this conversation and we are talking about retirement and where to go and where to live in retirement. So, Allison, I think one of the major things that people have in the back of their heads is it's so expensive. How can I afford to do this for myself or do this for my parents, my grandparents? I'm not certain what I'm asking in terms of cost, but I think that's a concern for everyone. Is there a way for you to address that?
All organizations, assisted, independent, in the Mount Pleasant and even Charleston area, we all work together to make sure that our prices are on point with our competitors. So we're not going to price anybody or promise anything that that can be beat or different down the street, I guess I should say. Most of this does come from long-term care insurance or the sale of a family home that they've had for years. Some of it comes from just smart savings and money management. But yeah, the cost of it's a definite concern for many people.
So what else happens at Franke at Seaside? My mom and dad, they move in, they enjoy going to lunch, dinner. Obviously, one of the positive factors has to be the fact that they've got companionship, but I have to assume there's activities. Is it part of the thing to work to keep people busy?
Oh, of course. And we have a huge social calendar. We go to many things downtown at the Gilliard. They went out to Middleton Place the other day to the tea room, I think it was. We go out to lunch in the community. They go to Target. The location that we have right here, many of them just drive their golf carts to Target and Harris Teeter, to Basil and Opal, all the restaurants that are right here that they can utilize in close proximity, which is really cool for them.
So a little advice then for someone who's thinking about moving into Franke. What is it that you would tell them? Hey, make certain that you talk about this, and what's the end game in terms of the goal? What would you like to know that Franke is going to offer to an individual or to a couple?
That's going to be different than other communities is the part of the Franke family. That feeling of belonging, that feeling of accountability, that feeling of you're investing in your retirement, and you have a say so in what goes on in this community and how we grow. So that's what I would say. It's definitely our sense of community here on campus, Franke family.
And for my mom and dad who move in there, again, going back to the stereotypical TV movie, I just have in my head this picture of a bunch of people in a room sitting in front of a TV, a movie, a show they may or may not like. That's not really what's going on in 2023.
It's not at all. It's not what's going on in anybody's facility. Our residents are very active. And have, this whole building that we're in, I know you can't see it, is kind of their home. So yes, they have their apartment, they have their private area, but this is their home. This is their living room is out here in our lobby area. And they're always out here talking to us and reading the newspaper, having their morning coffee. They're very active. We have a great porch most everybody sits out on, and we have happy hour Tuesdays and Thursdays out there. So, they definitely stay very active.
Cheers to that. Now, the other big question for anyone, all of us, regardless of what age we are, but obviously as we get older, healthcare is more of a concern. So can you talk a little bit about, I'm a resident at Franke. Are there on-site things? Am I still having to drive downtown to my doctor? Give me a sense of what the medical situation would be for a resident at Franke.
So you have the option. You can have us transport you to your personal doctor of choice, or you can see the doctor that comes on campus. Completely individual choice. We try to make it as easy as possible, but we also honor your wishes. Many of our residents have been with these doctors for years and years and years, and they trust them and want to continue to see them. We provide transportation, but if you choose to see our on-site doctors, then we're happy to accommodate that as well.
So if someone is actually considering this for themselves or their parents, can you give me an idea of a kind of timeline? Do I need to go to Franke now because I want to come in on January 1st of 2024? Is it a long time? Give me some of the idea of what I should be preparing in terms of if I'm going to make that move.
Yes, come on in. There's no harm in getting on our wait list. All that does is open communication between me and the family or whoever that person may be. Some residents are very specific on the size of apartment that they want, the location of apartment they want. The earlier you get on the list, the better your chances are of getting that specific one when you are ready for it, versus there being a crisis and you just having to come in and take what is available at that time. We do have large apartments. We have smaller apartments. We have corner apartments and interior apartments. So all of those things come into your decision on where you're going to live when you do make the move here. The more time we have to plan that, the happier you're going to be with the end result.
So obviously I'm not going to show up on Friday and then move in Monday. No. But in terms of your suggested, and obviously it'll be different for everybody, but people who are looking ahead, is that 6 months? Is that a year? Could it be longer than that?
It depends on what level of care you are looking into. For assisted living and memory support, you do not have to live on this campus. You can live anywhere, and there's not a huge buy-in. There's a 30-day contract, which a lot of people are very surprised to hear about. And again, it just depends on the size of the room. I have 2 rooms open right now. We could have you in 3 weeks. If you want my largest one with the best view, it may be 3 months. Just depends.
And just so everybody understands and there's no confusion, you can be a part of the Franke at Seaside community if you choose to be without actually living on campus.
You can. So you can be a part of the Franke at Seaside community through a Be Well at Home service. And there are multiple different things that you can learn about on our website. And you can move into our campus. You can come in and just live in Mount Pleasant or even live in North Carolina and still enter into our assisted living without ever living on campus in independent living. You don't have to be a member of the Franke family just to move into a higher level of care.
Well, the campus you have there is so centrally located off Rifle Range Road. Like you said, the shopping plaza where the Target, Harris Teeter are. You're not all that far from the beach, and you're not all that far from the Mount Pleasant Town Center. So central location there is really outstanding. So one more time, for people who want to get information, is the website the best place to go?
Website's the best place to go. You're going to be able to see all floor plans, all pricing information, some gallery photos. And then at the bottom of that, they're actually the contact information for myself and the healthcare community, as well as independent living. And feel free to call any of those numbers. We'll go ahead and do a quick assessment and get you to the right person.
And it sounds like your advice would be, the best thing would be, hey, come see the campus and take a tour.
You got nothing to lose.
Allison, thank you so much for your time. One more question for you. Auburn. Now, you were at Georgia. You could be bragging about a national championship 2 years in a row. The Bulldogs going to do 3 in a row?
You know, I don't know.
Okay.
I would prefer Auburn to get one than Georgia win 3.
Well, I have to tell you, our producer, Roger, is an Alabama fan, so he may be editing some things out of this.
I knew there was a reason I didn't like him.
So, Allison, one more time, give that phone number out so people know how they can get directly in touch with you.
843-856-4713 comes directly into my office.
Franke at Seaside, it's a big part of the Mount Pleasant community. Allison Macfie is waiting. She is the outreach director there at Franke at Seaside, and our guest today. Thank you so much for joining me. This is where the pages of Mount Pleasant Magazine come alive. So proud and so just to be a part of this community and part of this podcast. Thank you for joining us here today on Mount Pleasant Podcast.
Thanks for spending your time with the Mount Pleasant Podcast, your community, your podcast. Listen to past and future episodes at mountpleasantpodcast.com.